Something about the Gilded Age Season 4 doesn't feel normal this time, and once you see what's been confirmed, you realize we are not just getting another season, we are stepping into a completely different era where everything the characters built is about to be tested like never before. A time jump, shifting power, broken relationships, and consequences that no one is fully prepared for. It all starts now, and the real question is simple. Who actually survives the price of everything that happened before? There is something unusual happening around the Gilded Age Season 4, and if you've been paying attention, you can already feel it in the way every update is being framed. This isn't being treated like a normal continuation of a period drama anymore. It feels bigger, more controlled, and more intentional, like every piece of information we're getting is part of a much larger setup that hasn't fully revealed itself yet. And that alone tells you something important right away. This season is not going to play by the same rules as before. The confirmation of Season 4 didn't come with hesitation. It came early, almost too early, like HBO already knew there was no reason to wait. That kind of decision is not random. Networks don't move forward that confidently unless they see something working at a much deeper level. And in this case, what's working isn't just ratings or popularity. It's the emotional structure of the story itself. The way these characters have been built over time has reached a point where every choice now carries weight, and Season 4 is stepping directly into that pressure. What makes this even more interesting is the timing of everything surrounding it. Season 3 didn't just end on drama, it ended on separation, tension, and emotional fragmentation between characters who were once deeply connected. That kind of ending naturally sets up expectation. But what's happening now goes beyond expectation. We are being told there is a shift in time. Not a small jump, but a full 2-year leap forward. And that one decision changes everything about how we are supposed to experience this story moving ahead. Because a time jump is never just about moving the calendar forward. It is about skipping the emotional middle. It means we are not going to see how things slowly broke or slowly healed. We are arriving after the damage, after the decisions, after the silence. And that creates a very different kind of storytelling pressure. Instead of watching events unfold in real time, we are stepping into the aftermath and trying to understand what kind of people these characters have become when we were not watching every moment. That is what makes this season feel different already. It is not interested in giving us comfort or gradual answers. It is dropping us directly into consequences. And consequences are always heavier than beginnings. Because beginnings carry hope, but consequences carry truth. And truth, in a world like the Gilded Age, is never simple. Even the way the story is being described suggests something darker underneath the surface. Words like cost, reckoning, and careful what you wish for are not casual choices. They are signals. They are telling us that the victories of the past seasons are not clean victories anymore. Every success has created imbalance somewhere else. Every move forward has created something that now needs to be answered for. And that is where Season 4 becomes interesting on a deeper level. Because it is no longer just about ambition or social climbing or personal relationships. It is now about survival inside the results of those ambitions. Characters are not chasing dreams anymore, they are living inside them, and realizing that getting what you want does not always feel the way you imagined. So when we talk about the Gilded Age Season 4 changing everything, it is not an exaggeration. It is a reflection of where the story has naturally arrived. The foundation has already been built over previous seasons. Now the structure is being tested. And once you start testing foundations that have been standing for years, you don't always know what will still be standing when the pressure increases. And that is exactly where we are heading next. The moment you start breaking down what Season 4 is actually setting up, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. This is not just a continuation of personal storylines, this is a full shift in power dynamics. Every major character we left at the end of Season 3 is no longer standing in the same position, and that alone changes the entire emotional map of the show. Because when power shifts, relationships don't just evolve, they fracture, realign, and in some cases, completely collapse without warning. Take Bertha Russell for example. By the end of season 3, she was not just a social climber anymore, she was someone who had already climbed. She had pushed into a world that once rejected her and forced it to acknowledge her presence. But here's the important part that season 4 seems to be circling back to: winning in that world was never going to be clean. The idea that she changed society at a cost is not just a poetic line, it is a direct signal that everything she built now comes with consequences attached to it. And those consequences are no longer theoretical. They are going to start showing up in her actual life, in her marriage, in her family, and in the way people around her respond to her decisions. And then there is George. His position is equally complicated, but in a very different way. He has always represented control, stability, and calculated strength, but season 3 disrupted that image in a way that cannot be undone easily. Walking away from Bertha wasn't just an emotional decision, it was a structural one. It broke the balance that held their world together. And now, with the time jump pushing us 2 years forward, we are not going to see the breaking point itself, we are going to see what happens when. That break has already been living in silence for years. That is what makes the time jump so dangerous for storytelling. It removes the safety of explanation. We are no longer going to watch arguments form, decisions being debated, or emotions slowly building up. Instead, we are walking into a world where all of that has already happened off-screen, and the characters are now simply living inside the aftermath. That creates a very different kind of tension. One where everything feels settled on the surface, but unstable underneath. And this instability is not limited to just one storyline. It spreads across every major thread. Marion, Peggy, Larry, none of them are exempt from this shift. Because when a story jumps forward in time, it doesn't just move individuals ahead, it moves the entire social environment forward with them. Relationships that were uncertain are now either confirmed or broken. Opportunities that were open are now either taken or lost. And the emotional hesitation that once defined them is gone, replaced by results. What makes this even more interesting is how the official descriptions are carefully framing these changes. Nothing is being presented as simple resolution. Instead, everything is being framed as consequence and adjustment. That means the focus is no longer on what will happen, but rather on what has already happened and what it has cost. That shift alone tells you that season 4 is going to feel more grounded, more reflective, but also more emotionally heavy. Because once characters stop chasing outcomes and start dealing with results, the tone of the entire story changes. Ambition turns into reflection. Romance turns into questioning. Power turns into responsibility. And in that space, every decision feels heavier because it cannot be undone. And that is where season 4 starts to feel less like a continuation and more like a confrontation. A confrontation with time, with consequence, and with the version of themselves these characters have become when no one was watching the full journey. And as we move deeper into what this time jump actually hides, it becomes clear that the real shock of season 4 is not just where everyone ends up, but what they had to lose to get there. If there is one storyline that season 4 is clearly building its emotional weight around, it is the fractured center of George and Bertha Russell. Because this is no longer just a marriage storyline, and it is definitely not just a conflict between two powerful personalities. It has now become the emotional foundation that everything else in the show connects back to, directly or indirectly. And the most important part is this: season 4 is not starting from the moment they break apart. It is starting after the break has already happened, which makes everything around them feel heavier, quieter, and far more uncertain. A 2-year time jump changes everything about how their separation is going to be understood. It removes the shock. It removes the immediate emotional chaos. And instead, it replaces it with something far more complicated: acceptance mixed with unresolved tension. Because when enough time passes, people don't stay in the same emotional place they were in during the moment of impact. They adjust. They rebuild. They convince themselves they are fine. But that doesn't mean the original fracture disappears. It just means it becomes part of the structure they are now living inside. For Bertha, this shift is especially significant. She is not a character who sits in emotional stillness. She moves forward, she adapts, she recalculates. And Season 4 seems to be placing her in exactly that position again, trying to maintain control over a world that is no longer responding to her in the same way. The idea that she changed society at a cost is not just about public reputation or social standing. It is about the private cost of holding on to ambition when personal foundations start to weaken underneath it. And George's position runs parallel to that in a very different emotional direction. Where Bertha pushes forward, George is more likely to turn inward.